Hi, so this is Pamela from Animal Justice Emergency, and today we're going to be talking about a really important subject, and that's the war on other animals, the war that human animals are perpetrating on other living beings. Why the words that we use make a difference in the actions and the seriousness with which we address these issues. Why are we talking about the war on other animals? Well, as probably a lot of you will know, we're talking about the extermination of around about 3 trillion land and sea animals every single year. And who's doing that? Who's causing that? It's one species, so-called self-named Homo sapiens, the wise person, the wise man. Where does this term, the war on animals, come from? Basically, it just popped into my head one day, and because it seems like the enormity of the situation that we're dealing with, what else can you describe it as apart from a war? Now, subsequently, I've come to understand that the philosopher, the animal rights philosopher, Tom Regan, used the term as well. So, it's not an untoward thing to call it the war on animals. Why does it make a difference, the words that we use and naming things? Well, I think particularly in other kind of struggles, like feminist struggles, women's rights, black rights, until you get some things are named, like for example privilege, or white male privilege, or white privilege. Until things are named, we don't really, it's very hard to explain the reality of what's going on. And when things are named, or named correctly, that gives us a different handle in which to respond in a more appropriate way. So why are human animals perpetrating this war on other animals? To shore up our own sense of superiority, our own sense that as so-called Homo sapiens, we are over and above all of the other animals, and that we can basically do whatever we want to do with them. It's kind of like a massive cultural ego boost. And more than that, it legitimizes also the way that we treat the natural environment and other people. Because we have, with the war on other animals, we have the environment being destroyed as well. But also, if we can legitimize other animals as so other that we can do whatever we want to do to them, then we can legitimize also all the horrible things that we do to other people. Genocide, wars, torture, all the power-crazed things that the human species does to other beings, including its own species. And the bedrock of all of this, the fundamental, is the use of other animals. Now, people may say, well, not everybody's like that. Some people are good, and it's only a minority that do these horrible things. But the vast majority kind of sit back and just want a quiet life. Maybe they don't consider themselves as part of this war, but obviously, if you're complicit in something, for example, eating the bodies of beings that have been tortured to death for no reason, you are a participant in the war. So it's difficult to say that you're not. I mean, you can say that you're not in an attempt to make yourself feel better, but the reality is that you are part of it. So if we agree that we are conducting a war on other animals as a species, what is the solution? Because clearly it's a serious situation. Clearly it needs a serious kind of mobilization, an immediate and urgent response, because we're actually facing an emergency for ourselves, an emergency for all the other animals that we are killing with such energy, with such effectiveness, with such commitment, with such power, with such a lack of consideration of their basic beingness. That kind of energy, that's the sort of energy that we as activists, that commitment, that focus, that determination, that's where we need to be focusing our energy. So we need to focus our energy on creating a world of justice, peace, respect and rights for all other beings, including human beings. Yeah, I know it seems like a massive task, doesn't it? It is a massive task, but hey ho, you know. What else is there to do, really? We have the option to sit around, maybe do some fairly ineffective things, or we have the option to really take this whole war situation seriously and say, yeah, we've got to step up to the plate. How can we do this? We need a massive mobilisation of vegans in grassroots organisations across the world, across the different countries, mobilising to talk to other people and to explain the situation to them in words that they can understand, in their local communities, going out to them and forming bonds and relationships, but always bringing the message of rights and respect and peace. We need to change the dominant paradigm of human supremacy in our cultures, our global cultures. And that will be done by changing the conversations and using concepts and framings like the war on animals, like the animal justice emergency that we're facing, in everyday language and chatting to people and explaining why we're using these words. Why is this channel and this group called Animal Justice Emergency? Well, it's called animals for we wanted to put forward the animals as the most important element here. Justice, they require justice. Other animals, well, we all require justice. So we all require justice. An emergency, that framing was to talk about our response. It's an emergency for each and every single one of those individual beings that is being tortured to death for no reason. It's an emergency. It's an emergency, a catastrophic emergency if you look at the trillions of animals that are being killed. And it's a catastrophic emergency also for the planet because it's being ecocided to death by the players who are promoting animal so-called agriculture, the animal death industry. And then it's a catastrophic emergency for all the ordinary people who are complicit, don't really care, are not really bothered, just doing their own thing, and who soon we're all going to be toast because of this, because of catastrophic climate breakdown. So it's a fairly enormous emergency. And that's why it's important for us to act and to organise, to take ourselves and the other animals and the emergency and the war on animals seriously. Let's get a bit clear on what we're actually challenging when we take on human supremacy. Human supremacy is that weird notion that people have come up with, that human animals are so different and so much more great than other animals because of so-called intellect. Because human beings can apparently compose symphonies or create works of art, or we've got civilization. That's what they say. But somehow they still consider human beings who are intellectually challenged as humans. So that kind of wipes out the intellectuals thing. And who here can actually write a symphony? No, most people can't. But somehow we're still not being trotted off to slaughterhouses, and we're still treated with some degree of respect. Symphonyless. And what about this weird notion of civilization? Yeah, that would be the same civilization that is currently bringing the planet to its knees in terms of survival because of catastrophic climate change and because of the ecocidal destruction of all our natural habitats, of which the animal death industry is a major player. Well, that's really not sort of terribly convincing, is it? What about on the other side, the animals? We don't know how intellectually anything other animals are, because we, mainly human animals, don't actually speak the language of other animals. Okay, we might have had a shot at it with dolphins. So given that we don't speak cat, dog or dolphin fluently, or indeed at all, can we actually say that they are intellectually inferior? And does it matter if they're intellectually inferior? Maybe they are spiritually superior. We don't know. Sometimes we get that sense of feeling of connection with another animal, a non-human being, and we think, yep, they are spiritually superior. They have that ability to give comfort, a feeling of empathy and connectedness. Who has not experienced that? Who's from maybe a companion animal or being in the presence of a non-human being that can't even be explained, and it's amazing and it's wonderful. When people talk about symphonies and great art, what about the symphonies of, say, a murmuration of starlings, huge flock of starlings floating around, or fishers when you see them in those amazing shoals, or creating their own special little art projects to attract mates, which some species of fish and bowerbirds do. And there's probably like tons and tons and tons and tons of other things that they do. We just don't know. So let's not assume that we are the only species capable of creating so-called art. And then let's have another look at this whole civilization framing. Well, if civilization is basically bringing the planet to its knees, what about what the animals do, the other animals, which is living in harmony with other species, not causing ecocidal destruction and not causing imminent extinction of most other species? Well, I'm sorry, but that's kind of a plus point for the other animals, isn't it? So that's some thoughts on the framing of what's actually going on here with the war on animals, and why it's important to use that fairly strong term, because it's strong, yes, and it's accurate. It's a kind of genocidal war against innocent beings who can't fight back, and then who are sort of bred again to be attacked again and consumed. So if you think of it like that, it seems absolutely sick and psychotic. So this is Pamela from Animal Justice Emergency. Together we can win the war on other animals. And if you like this, maybe you want to subscribe or leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think.